Hello, Yuan from Manga4Dummies here to announce the kickoff of Fullmetal Alchemist Month, where each week this month, I'll bring you a video tangentially related to the world of Fullmetal to celebrate me posting up some old recordings of the podcast episodes on the series. Today we'll be looking at the military of Fullmetal Alchemist, more specifically the military of Amestris, the country in which most of the plot takes place. Warning, there may be spoilers ahead, most of it probably won't ruin your enjoyment of the series, but a warning nonetheless. So, Amestris, a wonderful little reflection of our history as a human race. In fact, much of the Amestrian hierarchy can find its real-life counterpart by looking at the 20th century European nations. If you had the opportunity to watch the last episode of the original 2003 anime series, you may remember the parts that allude to Nazi Germany. However, do remember that there was a lot of creative freedom given to the anime studio then, so this isn't necessarily the author's intent. Instead, some context clues exist to help us pinpoint a better counterpart in the form of the Kingdom of Prussia, which was a militaristic state that would eventually get absorbed into a unified Germany, which laid the foundations of the future Nazi Germany. We can find many similarities between the Prussian military and our fictional Amestris one. Their uniform is fundamentally similar, especially sharing color schemes. The head of the state was also the head of military, and although simplified in Amestris, the ranks follow closely that of the Royal Prussian Army, although with some adaptations. So let's look at the entire Fullmetal Alchemist military from the bottom up. In fact, if you've ever laid your eyes upon the Fullmetal Alchemist Profiles book, there is a handy chart outlining the military ranks, and for the most part we can see the differentiation of ranks by the shoulder marks of the uniforms that the various characters wear. Starting at the very bottom with only a vague attachment to the military is the police, whose primary characteristic is that instead of the standard blue uniform, these individuals wear a black variant with no frills attached. This part of the entire structure is only tangentially attached to the military, as although they can conduct their own independent investigations and deal with the more mundane day-to-day ongoings, they can easily be brought to a hard stop if orders quote-unquote come from above. As far as I know, there are no truly prominent characters who fall under this category, and their most prominent appearance was when they were interrogating Ling Yao for illegal immigration. The first real rank of the military is private, which can be synonymous with recruit, as this is the bare minimum that a soldier can be. Oftentimes, there are only two real ways you can become a private. The first is when you are fresh to the army, and the second is if you were to be demoted down as a form of punishment. Soldiers holding this rank have very little sway in the larger scheme of things, but do have a general leg up on the population. Oftentimes, these individuals have yet proven anything worthy of promotion, nor has their tenure been long enough to warrant a promotion. The most important character within the story holding this rank is Sheska, which you may remember as this prodigious bookworm that was able to memorize all the contents within a library. To prove the lowly status of the position, Sheska was hired to do little more than desk work for the military, thus granting her the rank. Usually people start here and only obtain this rank after completing their term at the military academy, but it does seem that there are a few other workarounds. But let's say you do get your promotion. This lands you at Lance Corporal. Because there is little information on what a Lance Corporal does within the confines of the series, we have to look at the real world to learn a little bit more. In the most simple terms, while privates are essentially anyone who even stumbles into the military, Lance Corporal is where you really can call yourself a military person. While individuals like Sheska can technically join the military without seeing combat as a private, if she were to promote to Lance Corporal, she could be compelled to be minimally useful in combat situations. Out of all ranks, Lance Corporal is by far the least explored, as there are no individuals at all referred to as such, and due to how minute the physical appearance differs, it's hard to get a good look at every individual with a name to determine if they are indeed a Lance Corporal. Moving on, the next few ones will have similar descriptions, with the deciding factor on which one a soldier would place being a mix of achievements and tenure. One step up from Lance Corporal is Corporal, and here you will find that they have one star in their uniform alongside the single stripe. The only person holding that rank does it in an unofficial manner, as it is Roy Mustang during the events of the 2005 film Conqueror of Shambhala, a film that I imagine many have not seen for very good reasons. As it falls under the umbrella of the original anime, many slide the film, and as a result the representative for the rank of Corporal into the unofficial canon of the Fullmetal Alchemist Codex. A step up from Corporal is Sergeant, and the number of stars doubles from 1 to 2. The most memorable character bearing that rank is Denny Brosh, who you may remember better as the partner of Mario Ross before she was phased out. Because the only actions that we've really seen him perform is escorting Edward, doubling both as security and surveillance, it is hard to see how many more privileges a sergeant may or may not have compared to the ranks below, apart from the obvious chain of command. Getting away from Denny, we find ourselves with Master Sergeants, which are best identified through their full trio of stars sitting alongside the single stripe. Within the roster of Master Sergeants, we find Kane Fury, one of the few soldiers handpicked by Roy Mustang when he was moved to Central. It seems that starting from here, oftentimes these individuals have one or more specific redeeming qualities. For Kane, he is a communications specialist, being adept with radios and telephones and the like. Losing the stars but gaining 2 more stripes are warrant officers. Again, we can see more and more specializations, such as in the case of Vado Falman, another one of Roy's most trusted mates, who is an intelligence specialist, bearing a memory akin to Sheska but even more expansive in a sense. Another prominent character that had once bore the rank is Hawkeye, right after the events of Ishval, where she showed off her proficiency as a sniper. The star is back for second lieutenants, a single lonely one alongside 3 stripes. At this rank, we do find ourselves with quite a few prominent characters. Vado and Hawkeye from earlier make a return, having both been promoted after moving locations, but Heyman's, another one of Roy's besties, Rebecca, Hawkeye's best friend, Henschel, one of Oliver's subordinates, and Kimberly's 4 Chimera bodyguards, Darius, Heinkel, Gerso, and Zampano, all fall within this category. Moving on to the upper half of the hierarchy, we have first lieutenants who sport a 2nd star. Among these, we find Hawkeye again after her final move to Bradley's side, and Yoki, one of the first villains and future running gag of the series. Next, we have captains who find themselves with triple stripes and triple stars. Among these, we have the bigger hitter of Buccaneer, among a few other minor ones. Now for the most interesting category are majors and state alchemists, who share the same level of authority. The two are not mutually exclusive or inclusive. You don't have to be an alchemist to be a major, and you are not stuck at major if you are a state alchemist. Let's start with the major side of the equation. Majors have 4 stripes and a single star sitting in the center. Of these, the 2 more prominent ones that aren't alchemists is Major Miles from 4th Briggs, who you may recall is 1/4 Ishvalan, and Arzin, who was the main antagonist in the original one-shot of the manga. I imagine Arzin is a lesser known character, as the one-shot is rarely mentioned or even considered by most. On the other hand, because of Fort Briggs' location, it is easy to not notice the stars and stripes, as they often have a warm coat to cover the uniform. However, let's now take some time to look at state alchemists. As stated before, state alchemists holds the same authority as majors, and most military alchemists introduced fall here. Edward, our main character, Alex, the man with the perfect figure, Sho Tucker, Kimberly, and Marco all do or have at one point held the rank. There will be at least one more prominent character previously mentioned that is a state alchemist but that has since promoted to a higher rank. Essentially, if you work for the government and are an alchemist, the bare minimum you can be is the equivalent of a major. Interestingly, this seems to be one of the 2 possible entry points for new prospects, as you either start from the military academy at private or prove your alchemic abilities and get slotted in here. Continuing on, we have lieutenant colonels who gain a 2nd star, and while there are a few characters who fall here, a lot of them are only canon within the 2003 anime, so I won't include them here. However, Hughes is probably the biggest named lieutenant colonel in the series, but admittedly he won't stay at that rank for long. Removing one word allows for promotion into colonel, and you gain your 3rd star. For this rank, the poster boy is definitely Roy Mustang, but other characters are seen bearing that rank too, as minor as they might be. Frank Archer is one of those characters, but he's only really relevant in the 2003 anime, while Henry Douglas is canon but plays a very minor role in the larger context of the story. Moving up yet again, we've arrived to Brigadier Generals, and while the stars disappear, the middle stripe fattens up. Ignoring the more boring characters, the 2 more prevalent individuals at this rank are Bas Grande, who doesn't play a major role in the main timeline, who was important in the Ishvalan flashback, and Hughes again. Starting off, the higher echelons of the military, we arrive to Major Generals. Major Generals regain a star to complement their fat stripe. And of these, the most important character is Olivier Armstrong, sister of Alex, future head of their family, and commander of Fort Briggs. Next, we have Lieutenant Generals who have a 2nd star to accompany the 1st. We are literally in the top 3 positions within the army, but there aren't really that many relevant characters here. For the most part, the only one that you would probably recognize is Grumman. In 2nd position are the generals, and we are now in one of the most exclusive clubs, as there have only ever been 2 characters officially shown as being generals. The first is Philip Armstrong, the man with the beautiful beard, who is also the current head of the Armstrong family and father of the other 2 prominent Armstrongs. The second is Roy, which is easy to overlook as it is in one tiny panel on the last chapter where he is shown sporting 3 stars. Finally, in Pokemon, we have the title of Pokemon Champion at stake. In Naruto, we have the title of Kage as the end goal. And in Fullmetal Alchemist, the top dog is President. And depending on where you first laid your eyes upon the series, you may have seen this peak position being referred to as King, Führer, or some other fancy combination of these terms. Because Amestris is a military state, whoever holds this role takes up the responsibility of the head of the military and the head of government, and for the first time in this military carries a row of 4 stars. During much of the series, Roy Mustang displays his desire to attain this role, and I imagine there are a few others too. That said, most prominent character Bradley was sort of groomed to be given the position through the machinations of father, so there is definitely some bullshit politics happening here. On the other hand, by the end of the series, Grumman does end up inheriting the position through some more political wizardry. Now that we have some knowledge of the various ranks, let's dive into history. What's interesting is that while Amestris was shown to be a military state throughout the events of Fullmetal, it seems that it wasn't always so, as it didn't pivot heavily into the military side until the quote-unquote election of Bradley as president, who then put a major focus onto warfare. Furthermore, Amestris, while being a physically small nation, is able to maintain dominance over the geography due to its knowledge and access to alchemy, something that father had brought to the area 300 or so years ago. Structure-wise, the Amestris army does seem to lack in both naval and air armed forces. It isn't hard to understand the absence of a naval army as it is a landlocked nation, but the missing air force is probably due to the lack of scientific advancements in that area. Instead, Amestris has one of the premier ground forces of the world, with both the strongest shield in the form of Fort Briggs led by Olivier Armstrong, and the strongest weapon in the form of the Eastern Army, who is best known for their involvement in the Ishval War. Unofficially, chimeras exist in the army, and their later introduction into the series does bring some questions as to what Show Tucker was supposed to research. Food for thought. Now let's talk about behaviors. For state alchemists, there are a few rules that they must follow. The first is to never transmute gold, the second is to never transmute life, and the last is to obey orders. Specifically because of this last rule, state alchemists are often called dogs of the military by the common people. Apart from those rules, all soldiers, alchemists included, have protocols to follow. One is that someone of a lower rank must formally salute someone of a higher rank. This is often done in jest if both individuals are friends, like in the case of Roy Mustang and some of his closer peers, or alternatively this can be done to vex someone who you both dislike and outrank, such as the relationship between Olivier and Roy again. Another rule is that members of the military must not engage in romantic relationships, probably to dissuade any emotionally driven reckless behavior. Because of this rule, we can often find some romantic inklings between some pairings, but rarely do we see anything flourish between them. Examples of pairings include Roy/Hawkeye and Denny/Maria. Granted, one of those two pairings seem to be more one-sided. Again, because Amestris is a military state, most elements of everyday life are intertwined with the military, whether it be the hospitals or even the libraries. This can be further seen when we meet the Armstrongs, who is both an influential political and military family. In terms of standard equipment, much of what is portrayed seems to resemble World War I or even pre-World War I German weaponry. Finally, to encapsulate our little tour in the Amestris military, let's look at the dark underbelly, starting with Father. Father's contributions to the military in the form of alchemy enabled the otherwise pitifully small nation to be a force to be reckoned with. That said, even with his involvement, the general populace does not know of his existence, and in fact only the highest echelons of the government realize his existence. Like any other good government, there is a corrupted portion at the top, which enables heinous things to be done, but it is important to wonder if the country was originally corrupted, which allowed Father to slip in and establish himself, or whether his existence is what made the peak corrupt. Sort of like a chicken and the egg scenario. Well, that's all you needed to know about the Amestris government and military. Come back next time when another Fullmetal Alchemist related video will be posted, alongside another recording of our podcast series. Thanks guys, hope you enjoy this. You on out.